October 4th, 1989. Leipzig, East Germany. The night is cold, but the streets hum with a quiet energy. Streetlights cut through fog like knives, illuminating the concrete towers that dominate the city's skyline. Gray, uniform, unyielding. In one of these towers, a night watchman begins his shift. He is a man of routine, unremarkable to anyone who passes him on the stairwell. Yet tonight, his footsteps echo against stone corridors with an unusual weight. The watchman carries a set of keys, jangling softly against his belt. Each key corresponds to a lock, a door, a section of the city that is supposed to remain closed to the world. The locks are not just metal. They're the material embodiment of a state that thrives on control, on separation, on fear. He moves through the halls with practiced precision, checking lights, noting the hum of machinery, recording in his logbook. On any other night, this would be just another shift. Tonight, it is not. Outside, the city is stirring differently. Citizens gather in small groups, huddled in candlelight. Their voices are soft, yet deliberate, weaving through the narrow streets like a river beneath the fog. They chant not with weapons, but with words, words heavy with hope, heavy with decades of quiet discontent. The paradox is clear to anyone paying attention. An empire built on surveillance and punishment is facing a population armed only with moral courage and the audacity to appear. Inside the tower, the watchman is unaware, absorbed in his rounds. He hears the faint static of a radio in the control room, a crackle that carries fragments of orders and instructions that never seem to arrive in full. The people in the ministries in the offices above him are speaking past one another, issuing commands that contradict reality. Some call for restraint, others for enforcement. Some suggest curfews, others say wait. In this chaos of paperwork and radio signals, the machinery of control is failing, but no one knows precisely where or how. He reaches a door labeled with a bureaucratic code. Behind it lies nothing spectacular, just a corridor leading to another set of doors, another section of the city. By all protocol, this door must remain locked. It is a threshold the watchman has never crossed at night. Yet tonight, the key feels heavier. The weight is not of metal, but of possibility. Somewhere in the city, a crowd moves closer to this tower, closer to the gates he guards without ever questioning why. In the office above him, a supervisor sips coffee, glancing at a ticking clock with growing anxiety. Reports of gatherings are streaming in, but the language of the reports is cautious, almost euphemistic. Demonstration, they write. Public unrest, they write. Yet the words feel inadequate, incapable of capturing the strange courage of citizens who have decided that fear will no longer dictate their movements. The watchman, miles away in his stairwell, is oblivious. As he approaches another checkpoint, he notices the first anomaly of the night. A security camera flickers, a light goes out, and then a whisper of movement, too distant to identify, yet enough to trigger a subtle shift in awareness. Every sense sharpens. He checks the locks. Each responds predictably. Each resists the test of human touch, until he reaches the final key. His hand hovers above it. He is not a hero. He is a man who follows orders. And yet the silence of the city presses upon him, demanding a decision he has never been trained to make. Below, the crowd grows. The chanting becomes rhythmic, a pulse felt through the cobblestones, the fog, the walls of the tower. People are singing songs from decades past, melodies banned, melodies meant to remind the state that memory cannot be locked away. They move like a river, slow at first, then gathering force, drawing strength from one another. The paradox is unavoidable. They're ordinary citizens, teenagers and factory workers and mothers with children, confronting a machine of oppression that outnumbers them, outguns them, and yet cannot touch the moral conviction they carry. The watchman pauses. He listens to the radio, hoping for instructions, for the familiar voice of authority. Static, fragmented messages, conflicting orders. The empire above him is alive with panic and indecision, and for the first time, he realizes that the machinery of control has a blind spot, his blind spot. He is the fulcrum on which the night balances. One turn of a key, one decision, and everything could change. He recalls stories of the past. Neighbors disappearing for speaking truths too loudly. Colleagues silenced for questioning protocol. Friends sent away for refusing to obey orders that felt unjust. Every lesson whispers caution. And yet, in the corridors of that tower, he feels the weight of history pressing against him. Outside, the voices grow louder, braver. They are calling, not for guns, not for violence, but for the possibility of freedom. For the first time, he sees the paradox of the situation in sharp relief. The Empire's strength has always been absolute control, the certainty that no door could ever open without consequence. Yet here he is, a night watchman, whose hands are ordinary, whose face is unknown, whose life has been small and unremarkable. And yet, his choices tonight are more powerful than armies, more consequential than the generals in their offices above. He moves toward the final door. The metal is cold, indifferent to human fear or courage. His fingers brush the key, linger. Outside, a group of young protesters huddle around a flickering candle, faces alight with a strange mixture of fear and hope. They have no weapons, yet their moral force is undeniable. Somewhere, deep inside, the watchman feels a strange kinship with them, a connection forged not by duty, but by the shared recognition that history is unfolding, whether the state likes it or not. He takes a breath. The night is silent for a moment, suspended between the pull of obedience and the gravity of conscience. Every instinct tells him to lock the door, to follow orders, to remain invisible. Every instinct also tells him that the machinery of fear is failing, that the tide of human courage cannot be contained by paper or policy, by radios or keys. In that moment, the paradox crystallizes. The Empire cannot stop what it does not see coming, what it cannot understand. And the man with the keys, the unremarkable night watchman, stands at the threshold of history. One decision, one small human act, one turn of metal in a lock. The camera pans upward to the towers, the fog, the cobblestone streets teeming with whispers of defiance. Somewhere above, bureaucrats argue in circular sentences, trying to reclaim control. Somewhere below, the crowd waits, unaware of the pivot upon which their fate rests. And the night watchman, uncelebrated, unknown, feels the quiet weight of impossibility. History is about to change, and yet no one knows it. Not the generals, not the ministers, not the young protesters, and certainly not the man who guards the door that may soon decide the future of a nation. He turns the key slightly, testing its resistance, feeling the lock's cold metal against his palm. The moment stretches. The fog deepens. The streets hold their breath. And in the silence, the paradox waits, suspended, a state built to control everything, undone by someone it never noticed. 9:17 p.m. The city is alive in a way that feels impossible. Leipzig, usually disciplined under the gray weight of East German rule, pulses with movement, soft yet insistent. Outside the gates of the tower, the crowd grows, hundreds now, maybe thousands. Candles flicker like stars in the mist, illuminating faces etched with determination and fatigue. Mothers clutch children close. Teenagers link arms. Factory workers carry banners made of bedsheets, their words simple yet explosive. Freedom, truth, justice. They do not shout for violence. They do not wave guns. They wave the quiet but unstoppable force of human will. Inside the tower, the night watchman moves with a heightened awareness. Every creak of the floorboards beneath his boots, every hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, carries significance. He listens to the radio again, static slicing through the air like a blade. Fragmented orders, contradictory instructions. One voice demands restraint. Another insists on action. Somewhere in the offices above him, men with medals and titles argue over hypothetical scenarios, unaware that the real scenario is already at the door. He stops in front of a panel of locks. Keys dangle from his belt. Each lock is a small bastion of the state's authority. Each a silent testament to decades of control, of obedience, of fear. The paradox presses against him. All the planning, all the protocols, all the armies in the country cannot match the significance of his next act. The empire above him is paralyzed by paperwork and indecision. The crowd below is energized by hope. And he, ordinary, unremarkable, unseen, is the bridge between them. He thinks about what obedience has meant in his life. Stories of men punished for questioning orders. Stories of colleagues sent to labor camps, families torn apart. He has lived in the shadow of this machinery for decades. And yet tonight, obedience feels insufficient. There is a moral gravity in the air, a pull toward conscience that is stronger than any manual or rulebook. He breathes deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him like the cold fog outside. Through the windows, he can see the crowd more clearly now. The candlelight glows against the concrete, flickering shadows over faces determined yet vulnerable. A teenager waves a homemade sign, words smeared but legible. "We are not afraid." The sight strikes him, not with fear, not with judgment, but with the impossible clarity of what history is demanding. These are ordinary people. No strategy, no weapons. Just courage. And it is enough to bend the arc of a regime. He checks the doors again, testing the locks with careful precision. Each one resists, but the resistance is not hostility. It is expectation. The locks are not aware of the paradox unfolding. They do not know that a single human decision could change everything. He remembers the stories he has heard, the warnings drilled into him over years of service. Never improvise. Never act without orders. Never step outside the script. And yet, for the first time, he realizes that the script is meaningless, that orders are irrelevant, that the machinery of fear has been circumvented by human determination. He hears footsteps behind him. Another guard, younger, jittery, clutching a flashlight as if it were a weapon. "What are they doing out there?" the young man asks, voice low, almost pleading. The night watchman does not answer immediately. He looks out the window again, sees the swell of people, the soft glow of candles, the subtle shift in the air. "They are waiting," he says finally, quietly, "and we're deciding if we meet them with doors or with history." The younger guard swallows, unsure if he should laugh, argue, or flee. The night watchman turns back to the locks, feeling the cold metal bite against his fingers. Each key is a potential, a decision, a pivot on which the lives of thousands and the fate of a state hang. The paradox is unbearable. He is unarmed, unknown, insignificant in the eyes of the bureaucrats above. And yet he holds the power to prevent violence, to open a path to freedom, to allow history to unfold without bloodshed. Below, the crowd grows restless. A chant begins, low and rhythmic. We want freedom. We want truth. It is not a threat. It is a demand, polite and impossible to ignore. The night watchman hears it through the walls, through the fog, through the crackle of the radio. The sound presses against him, not as intimidation, but as moral clarity. The paradox is undeniable. The empire's strength has always been measured in compliance, in fear, in unyielding order. And yet here, ordinary people wield a moral force that cannot be contained. He reaches the final lock. The metal is cold, indifferent, but his hand trembles anyway, not from fear, but from the magnitude of the choice before him. He thinks about the young protesters, the mothers, the workers. He thinks about his own life, unremarkable and safe until tonight. And he realizes that safety is not the highest good. Humanity is. Conscience is. Courage is. And in that moment, he understands what he must do. The younger guard watches him, wide-eyed, as the night watchman lifts the key. The lock resists as expected, but it is no longer a barrier. It is a threshold, a portal to a future that cannot be predicted. He turns the key slowly, deliberately, feeling every mechanism engage. Each click is loud in the quiet tower, reverberating through walls and corridors, echoing in history. The lock opens. He hesitates for just a heartbeat, aware that the sound of the bolts sliding back will change everything. Then he pushes the door, and it yields. Outside, the crowd senses it immediately. Murmurs ripple through the streets, as if the city itself is breathing in relief. The teenagers with candles step forward, the mothers smile with disbelief, the factory workers cheer softly. No one expected the doors to open, and yet here they are. The paradox of obedience and conscience has manifested. The man who was supposed to lock them out has instead allowed them in. The younger guard exhales, half in disbelief, half in fear. He's letting them through? He asks, voice trembling. The night watchman does not answer. He watches the people pass, each step a triumph of human courage over institutional paralysis. Somewhere, high above, the bureaucrats are still arguing, unaware that the pivot of history is not in their hands but in his. As the crowd moves through the gates, the night watchman feels a strange detachment. He is both part of the moment and outside of it, a silent witness to history that he has helped shape. He sees the relief on faces, the hope, the wonder that change can happen without bloodshed, without armies. The paradox lingers, an empire built to control, undone by an ordinary man following the quiet insistence of conscience. He closes the door behind him gently, as if to preserve the sanctity of what has just occurred. The radio crackles again, but no instructions come. It is irrelevant now. The machinery of fear is irrelevant now. Outside, the candles continue to glow. Voices continue to rise. The city, for the first time in decades, feels like a place where possibility outweighs power. And in that moment, the night watchman understands something that generals and ministers never could. History is not written by those who plan it, but by those who act when planning fails. He stands alone in the corridor, key in hand, the paradox complete. One man, uncelebrated, has ensured that a state built on obedience will falter, that fear will not dictate every human decision, that hope can persist even in the shadow of concrete towers and authoritarian mandates. The crowd moves on, unaware of the pivot upon which their freedom rests. And the night watchman, ordinary and silent, watches them pass, carrying a quiet weight that will never be recorded in official histories. He has faced obedience and conscience and chosen humanity. And in that choice, the city breathes again, the state falters, and history begins to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. The gates are open. The night air carries a scent of damp stone, candle wax, and something far heavier, freedom. Leipzig breathes differently now. The crowd surges forward like a living tide, unarmed, unwavering, unbroken. Faces glow in candlelight, young and old alike, as if the very act of stepping forward had broken a spell. Laughter mingles with tears. Murmurs become shouts, shouts become chants. Somewhere, an accordion plays, hesitant at first, then louder, and the city listens. The empire, built over decades with bricks, metal, and fear, is collapsing not with gunfire, not with violence, but with hesitation and courage. Inside the tower, the night watchman leans against the doorframe, silent, invisible. He watches the crowd flow past, carrying the weight of their own history on shoulders he cannot touch. Generals and bureaucrats argue in offices far above, voices rising, papers rustling, radios crackling in a futile attempt to regain control. Orders are shouted, but there is no one to give them to. The locks he had once guarded, the keys that jingled quietly at his belt, are now irrelevant. The paradox is complete. The state's power lies in obedience, but the obedience it demanded is meaningless because he chose humanity over procedure. Outside, the streets are alive with movement, faces alight with disbelief. People embrace strangers, children run laughing through puddles reflecting the candlelight, and a young woman stands atop a fountain, raising her arms as if she could lift the city itself. The machinery of fear cannot comprehend this, cannot react in time, and that is why it is powerless. The night watchman steps back, fading into the shadows, a witness to the impossible. He is uncelebrated, unrecorded, Yet his action has tipped the scales of history. He recalls the decades of silence, the ordinary life spent under surveillance, the routines that ensured nothing remarkable ever happened. And yet here he stands, the fulcrum upon which a regime falters, the bridge between fear and freedom. The paradox hums in his mind. The small, quiet decisions of ordinary people can outweigh the largest, loudest structures of power. The empire above him is learning, too late, that control is only as strong as those who enforce it. And when conscience outweighs orders, the state is nothing but a hollow shell. In offices above, confusion reigns. Radios emit static. Men with medals and titles consult maps and logs as if they could force time to reverse. Guards wait in hallways, unsure if they are supposed to act or flee. The night watchman knows that any moment could have been catastrophic. A wrong order, a push toward force, and the streets could have run red. But did not. Humanity prevailed. One man's moral choice preserved countless lives. And yet, that choice will remain invisible to the histories that the empire will write tomorrow. The crowd moves further into the city, spreading like wildfire, carrying with them the knowledge that the gates are open, that fear can be overcome, that obedience is not the highest duty. People pause to embrace, to weep, to sing. Someone waves a makeshift flag, white with red lettering. Freedom cannot be locked. It flutters in the wind, catching the candlelight. The night watchman watches silently, knowing that his own name will not be written beside it. The paradox extends. Those who change history are often those who vanish from it.